here with Koko, who is the creative mind behind the wonderful Love, Hope, Heart murals that are found around Denver. Hello, Koko.
Hi, Asia.
It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you so much for talking to us about this. Yeah, there's been a lot of curiosity about who you are and, you know, the work that you kind of do. So if you wouldn't mind telling us just about yourself and that work.
Sure. I'm an artist and based here in Denver, and I primarily do outdoor public art, generally called street art more often than not nowadays. I do kind of a mix of a lot of what I call semi-legal pieces, which are pieces that I put up wherever I choose to put them up. Usually on things like dumpsters and boarded over windows and abandoned buildings, the kind of ugly things that could use a little bit of beautification. Like I never jump people's fences. Right. Doing it. It's like someone described it as vandalism light one time. I don't know if that's really accurate or not.
I love that.
And then out of that has grown, I'm also a filmmaker, but out of the street art project has grown this whole commission work that I do. And I do a lot of larger scale murals using the same techniques that I do for my smaller pieces, which I get commissioned to do inside and outside of buildings and mural festivals. I'm in the Crush again this year. I'll be my fifth year doing that. And we have Babe Walls coming up here, which is all women and gender non-binary mural festival coming up, which is going to be really cool. It's been really fun to be part of. It's like I have a really amazing group of people together for it. It's been a super kind of empowering thing to be part of. I'm really excited about it. And then that's about it. You know, those are kind of the main things. I've also done a lot of commercial photography over the years. I was the house photographer for Tracks for, I guess, like 8 years. For a long time. I still obviously have a lot of connections and roots there. And so when I started out this project, like that was one of the first places I went to put up a piece was on Tracks. So I thought that was kind of important. But yeah, that's basically what I do around Denver. And all over, I've done pieces in other places around the state too, but mostly in Denver.
Great. So you mentioned that you are a photographer and a filmmaker. So how does that has that had any effect on this specific piece, or?
Well, I mean, photography always plays a big part in my artwork because the things that I do, the series I've been doing for the last 5 years of wheat-based pieces I do is called temporary structures. Mm-hmm. And by nature, they are super temporary. They're made out of paper. They're put up with biodegradable glue. And so they have like a specific lifespan to them. Okay. And they, they eventually just fall off the wall or wash off the wall. But sometimes that happens that day, like a hailstorm or something, or something crazy happens, and so a big part of the process is photographing them. It's the last thing I do after I put up a piece. I photograph it, and then I love to watch the pieces kind of age and decay out in the world. Is one of my favorite parts about it. So whenever I cross that piece's path again, I re-photograph it. So I kind of track the history of them through photography, which is really kind of cool.
Oh, I love that. It's like the growth chart,
Yeah. Right. So it kind of goes in the fall apart.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so beautiful. So with this particular piece, what was the inspiration behind it?
Well, I was it's pretty much right after the lockdown. I always go pasting like every Sunday, no matter what, pretty much, and then a lot of other days as well. But Sunday is usually my day where I go and kind of check all my pieces and fix the ones that need fixing and stuff like that. And we had just been locked down. I think it was maybe the second week of the lockdown. I was like, well, I should be able to go pasting, and I'm going to wear a mask, and I'm in a car by myself, and I'm going to places outdoors where there's no one else. Yeah. And so I was like, I can go paste. So I went out and did, and the pieces, a lot of my pieces, my regular pieces that I put out in the street, I like they are not intended to be super clear as to what they're about, or it's like I want the viewer to kind of make their own connection to it, and like having some amount of mystery is fine with me. And but I put up the piece that I was the new print I was putting out at that time, and it really just it just did fit in right with like this moment of time. I didn't really want to be putting out something that made people wonder, like, what is that? What's that about? And so I decided, I really wanted to try and make a print that would like help people feel a little bit better in this super stressful time. And so I started thinking about that, and I talked to a few friends about it, and I was like, well, what makes people feel good? Like pictures of puppies and kittens, or, like those kinds of things. And I was like, well, I was talking to someone, and they were like, well, you have a really uplifting palette that you also use in your colors. And I was like, well, okay, so, color is something that always makes me feel good. And so I started out with basically the color that always makes me feel the best, which is yellow. Which, as you can see on my purse, is my phone.
And that's what stands out in that mural as well. It's just so bright in that yellow color.
The yellow it really pops. It's just such a great, like, light reflective, high visibility color, but it also just is one of those colors that kind of like lightens the mood, kind of lifts you up a little bit. And then it's always been a color that's sort of like, the caring color, and also I've done a lot of stuff around the heart shape, like shows up in my work a lot. My main print, this one back here, like has this big heart, like right in the middle of it. So I was like, the heart, it's like a good. So I put that together, and then I want to add. I'm like a purely visual person, so like that like worked for me.
Yeah.
Like not everybody's purely visual, and I started thinking about what would be a good word to put. On a poster, you always want a word that's relatively short and that's really clear, and but also is meaningful. And like hope just seemed like the perfect one, just because it has this kind of, it exists in the present, but also in the future. It's like you're like hopeful. You can be hopeful now, but you're like hoping for something that's going to come. And so it has this sort of positive connotation to it that I really liked, and also like the connection to. Shepherd Fairey's great Obama poster, just like hope is just a great word, and so I put that on there, and I used like kind of the same colors that I generally use in my palette. Went through my process, and I came up with this print, which was called Pink Lemonade Hope, because that yellow and magenta combination I've used for a long time is called Pink Lemonade. So. I just love it for whatever reason, and I just printed up a few of them, which was kind of a counterintuitive thing to do at that moment in time. It was like we were sort of in a zero income mode, and like it's like the idea of going and like printing stuff didn't really seem like a genius idea, but I just really wanted to, and so I printed a few of them up and. Put them out on my Instagram, and then just put a note and just asking that if anyone had high visibility spots specifically that needed one of these prints to hit me up on Instagram, and literally they've been coming in ever since, and it's been really amazing.
That's wow.
But all along I've done it as like a.
No, I've got a cat. It's fine. You have a new guest.
Sorry, furry guest. Loves to participate. Where was I? So I did it. I've done the whole project as like 100% free project. But then if people have asked, I've said, hey, if you want to, you can donate to the print and supplies fund for it. And I just gave my Venmo out for that. Pretty much like that's been happening all along too. Is that people have really like, stepped up, and then not only gave me money to cover the expenses on, the piece I did. There was a lot of boarded over windows around town and things like that. So a lot of stores and businesses were the first ones to reach out to me, then they, were sort of paid forward for other prints to be made, and it's kind of just kept itself rolling along the whole time. It really has been like it's paid for itself like the whole time, which has been kind of. I'm still donating my time, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like my labor, but as far as like the cost of it, and color printing is like crazy expensive.
Yeah.
I have it down to a science of as cheap as it can be, but even at that point, it's still every piece you put out, there's X amount of dollars that you're sticking to the wall. So it's really been a big help that people stepped up and supported the project, and it kind of started getting them up all over town, and then the botanical gardens tracked me down and were like, "How would you put one on the gardens?" It was like.
Wow.
Like, just so different for me, because usually I'm running around just like looking for spots that I choose, and so to have like something like that, especially something like the gardens, that's such a beautiful place, and like I would never just go by and slap one of my pieces on there. It's just like not a place where I would do that, and so they tracked me down and had me put up a piece on their building, and that really kind of opened some floodgates, because all of a sudden all these other like city type things, like the Historical Society, and then the Arvada Center, Lakewood, like these other counties were like, Boulder at the Dairy Center. Like, there were all these places that like kind of stepped up and were like, it was validated in a way.
Yeah,
someone else was able to get this through whatever steps it took to get that approved, which, anything like that, it takes there's all several hoops, that go along the line. And so it kind of showed them, and it's like, the Botanical Gardens did it, we could do it.
Right.
And so that ended up getting a bunch of pieces. And also out of that, there was a Channel 7 news story on it, and like out of that, then I got more and more people. So it really had this cool kind of like avalanche rolling along.
That's wonderful. So it sounds like there's been a really positive response to
It's been really amazing, and it's like, I don't think this print's going to change the world or save the world in any way, and I don't think it necessarily like connects to everybody. But it's been really amazing to see that the people it does connect to, it really connects, and it makes them like actually feel better. And in that time, it was like, especially when everyone was all locked down, and, it's like now it's a little bit more like it's a little different moment in time. But that moment in time was really like, hey, kind of a so unexpected stuff. And so people really did respond to it and continue to. I get like emails and stuff all the time where people like go out of their way to contact me and tell me like how good it makes them feel, how much they love seeing it around, and that makes it really helpful. And so I love that part. It sounds like somebody's good. Are we in the pause for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
Berlin.
New guest now. Love that. So we were just talking about kind of how this project has gotten started, and it's had a great response from the community. One of the things that we were wondering was kind of how the locations were chosen, if they were chosen, and you spoke on that a bit, that it seems a lot of people have just reached out to you.
Yeah, it was really interesting that way, because in the past, that's the hardest thing about doing street art is finding good spots to put your work. Like, there's a million spots where you can put your work where no one will see it. Like in the middle alleys.
Right.
Yeah, there's all kinds of those spots, but no one's going to see it, and it's not worth it. It's not really worth the investment. And so I'm always looking for those high visibility spots. So this was really interesting, because I haven't solicited any of the spots. They've all come the other way around. It kind of like flipped my whole model. I do everything upside down. And they just started coming in, and then I'd put a piece on one business, and then the people who are, the other business owners who are friends with that business owner, follow them on Instagram, are like, oh, I've got a spot here, like we have a place on Colfax, that'd be cool. And so it's been this just totally organic Instagram's been the only promotional tool of any kind that I've used for it. And it's just basically, I mean, I've been putting them up every day since, I think the first one went up April 8th. So it's been like kind of nonstop since then. And then I've had some help. I've been getting inquiries now from out of state. One of the first ones I got was from in-state, from an artist friend of mine up in Summit County, a really cool artist named Shannon Goffin, who wanted to do a project up there and got funding from First Bank to do some stuff kind of around their non-existent high school graduation and trying to do something for that, doing some events around it. And she's incredible. Like, it's really hustled, and like she got permission to put them on like every bus stop in Summit County.
Wow!
And then went around and put them up. Like, there's all these pieces up there that I didn't have to do anything to put up.
Yeah.
And then I've gone up and done the bigger installs for her. She gets some spots like on they have a really nice amphitheater in Dillon, and then a bunch of others. So all the bigger ones I've gone and installed, but she pretty much did all the 2x2s and 3x3s up there. But I just sent a bunch of prints out to New York City. I should be going up starting soon with another really cool three-faced artist who's based in New York. And I've been corresponding with Kansas City and Sacramento, Tucson, and some other towns around the state. And it's all just been people reaching out to me, and pretty much just saying yes to everything, and just going with the flow on it, and really like not worrying about any sort of like business model around it, and it's been really cool. That part of it has really taken care of itself, and which is kind of because there really are. There's so many, there's so many much more important things for people to give their money to, and so I really appreciate those people and those businesses especially who did. And I got like an art grant from 9.Arts and like some things like that, so it's been this kind of cool. And then the most exciting thing that came out of it, or one of the most exciting things, is I have a show coming up. We still don't know the exact date, at the Botanical Gardens. And they have a new building which has 3 big art galleries in it. I'm doing a show in one of those galleries, which we had talked about opening on August 1st, but now they don't think that they're probably be even later than that, beginning of September. So that was really cool too. They totally came out of that. So it's been interesting, this really organic, like kind of counterintuitive program, where you just let things like take their own path and just see what happens. And this one's definitely has really done that, which has been a lot of fun to do, just to be part of it. It's been great.
Oh, I love that. That sounds so wonderful. So we know that there's been a great positive response to this. Have you noticed any negative response or any vandalism? I know with the protests and things going on, certain things were kind of vandalized in the heat of the moment, maybe. But have you noticed any kind of a negative response?
No, not really. Like, my method in the streets is kind of the graffiti culture is really about respect. And it maybe doesn't seem that way from the outside, but it really is, and even though I do more on the street art things and stuff, I always respect the other artists who are doing work out in the street, including, that goes down to the tags. Like, I'll never paste over a tag, and things like that. So I try not to create conflict with the other artists, and a lot of the people, especially who are doing the tags, are kind of the younger, it's a lot of male energy there, and so there is this people get in these battles and stuff if they feel they're being disrespected, and so I try and always stay like outside and find my own spots and be creative and not just go over other people's stuff. And so like I'm always, but there's always X amount of people who will tag your work, and a lot of times it really doesn't have anything to do with your work. What it is, it's just they're just tagging.
They're just
like starting out like graffiti kids, like the like real graffiti artists call them toys, and like the toys are like they got their can of paint out there
on any surface.
It's more about vandalism and the fun and the thrill of it.
Yeah,
and then there's a core group out of that group who like falls in love with what they're making, and actually those are the artists within that group, and they're the ones who really stick with it. So when you see the great, like full multicolored graffiti pieces and stuff, like those are the graffiti artists. And it's like a lot of the tagging and stuff is more kind of like teenage, not to like profile anybody, but it tends to be kind of sort of like young, kind of just out for fun, like. And that doesn't really have a lot of intent behind it. And so I have had a couple pieces get tagged, especially in zones like on Capitol Hill. They're almost like, I always have had the walls across from City O City, where I've been putting pieces on those walls for 5 years now. And a lot of other, I give space for other people too, but I've like kind of dominated those walls for a long time. And that, those spots tend to be the ones that are more likely. I did have, in those spots, I had the Hope Heart get tagged a few times, which I just fixed it. I just, the bigger pieces are made out of multiple pieces that are assembled on the wall. And so if one piece is jacked up, I can just fix that, that part of it, which is kind of good if they don't cross over to too many. And I don't know if that was specifically a response to what the piece said, or if it, again, was just somebody tagging everything, and that just happened to be one of the everythings. During the protests, like there was a few early nights of the protests where there was a lot of, not the protesters, but like a lot of like kind of homeless people who were like down in that area, and other kind of just, I don't know, kind of Capitol Hill kind of folks who were just like hangers on who really weren't there for the protest, but were really there for the riot. You know? And I think a lot of stuff got painted over, and my big Hope Heart that was there had a really like sad like comment written on it, which like I don't have any problems with anybody doing anything, but as far as like putting legitimate protests on buildings, that's totally like that's the correct thing to do. That's like that's free speech, and like sometimes those words are more important than the property.
Absolutely.
So like having my piece being like tagged with something that was actually a protest phrase, which they were like, it was like hope, that it was like, we never had it, or something like that. It was like kind of sad, It more like bummed me out than anything else, not because it was like destroyed, but what it said. But then I also saw a lot of, when I was out and about, like, which I am all the time, I saw in the mix with all the legitimate protests, there were a lot of like toss-ups, which are kind of, it's like the next step up from a tag. It's like sort of a black and white piece, or like one color piece, like the bubble letters. Usually a little bit bigger. It has just like a fill that's just real simple, but that's generally like, that's a standard like graffiti mode. And so there were obviously like people in that crowd who were just like having fun, which I thought that was kind of bullshit, but that didn't have anything to do with my work. And so I just like fixed my pieces, and I really have had almost, there's one up next to like this bus stop in Boulder, and it's gotten like little tags on it a few times, and it's like next to the bus stop. People,
just
one of those natural kind of like, So really, I don't take any of that personally, and it's not about me. It's just about them reacting to the space. So really, I haven't had any negative, and I've had like a few sort of smart ass comments about this idea that it's wouldn't it be nice to have hope? Kind of
right.
It's just such a simple thing, and it's it's not trying to solve all the world's problems. It's just hope is something that can help us do that. But now there's really been 99.99 positive response to it, which has been part of the reason I've kept on doing it and really just continued to ramp it up, because it's it's made me feel really good to be able to do it.
Yeah.
It's been an uplifting thing for me to be able to do something that helps people feel a little bit better. It's it's been really cool that way. So there really hasn't been anything negative at all. And if you watch the Channel 7 news story, they show the one piece that's tagged, and he has he has an interesting little line about it. I forget exactly what he says. Kind of showing the range of things that happen. And a few of them have gotten postered over,
right.
Advertising posters or whatever. And that's just, you do work outdoors and in the streets. It's just part of the deal. It's if you're gonna get upset about that shit, you're gonna be upset a lot. You're in the wrong business. Yeah. It's not a good place to be. You should just be indoors. It's been really cool that way, and just being really positive, and that's pretty much all I've been doing for the last. I could have been doing it for 40 days straight or something like that. At one point, I was shit, I gotta take a couple days. It's just I wasn't doing it around the clock. Right. But it's just this constant, just trying to keep ahead of it. And it's kind of I was still getting tons of requests, and I'm dealing with the out of state stuff now too. But it definitely is it's got a good pace to it now. I've been able to keep up with it pretty well. Great.
Just a few more questions. So how long would you like to see this installment stay up? Would you like it to be permanent, or?
I always love putting up permanent ones, but I put them up with, these ones are all put up with my biodegradable temporary glue. And so, they kind of just stay up till they fall down. Where they start to look bad. I'll keep replacing them as long as people will let me have things on those spots. A lot of the boarded over windows and things I have, have since gone away, and so that's kind of but then I've had people have, do pieces on walls or ask me to do one inside their place or whatever.
Great.
So that's, they're definitely temporary. It kind of depends on the weather is the biggest factor, storms. We get these crazy storms here, as you know.
Out of nowhere.
And they'll get soaking wet. As long as there's no hail or anything, they just they get wet, but then they just dry right back up and just stick right back to the wall. And so they're pretty tough for being just a thin piece of paper glued to the wall. But I just went and looked at the first one I did the other day, and it's it's fading pretty hard. The yellow's fading out of it pretty hard. And it's just being in the sun and whatever. And generally, with all my other spots in town, as things, I like them to be kind of beat up and faded out. But if there are some place that's sort of a high visibility spot, let's just replace them to keep them looking fresh. And these ones, I really the image of of an old beat up print that says hope sends a different message. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to keep it I want to keep them looking as good as possible. So I'll just keep replacing them until the property owners don't want them on the property, or if they say hey, could you put a permanent one up? And it's just a matter of I just use a different kind of glue that makes them waterproof and UV resistant and stuff.
Awesome, nice.
So they last a pretty long time.
Great.
At least 4 to 5 years if I do it.
Wow.
And if I maintain them, like if I go and put a top coat on them, probably after like maybe 3 years would be the best, 3 to 4 years, then probably get another 4 years out of this.
Wow, I love that. So it's temporary, but then it's also got that longevity, you know?
You can
Do you want it?
You can
Oh
make
my
them
gosh.
long wear them if you
That's
need
great.
to. And then the ones that are indoors, like this one's just put
Mhm.
up with my regular pace, like they last forever as long as nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to take that down right now, I would just need to soak it with water, let it sit, and soak it with water again, and I could just peel it off.
Oh, wow, cool. Real easy.
Yeah, it's super easy. And like I do occasionally, you know, I rarely have people ask me to take them down, but I've had a couple places where they were on private property and the tenants changed and they
Right.
had me come in. I had a huge one in Zeppelin Station that I had to take down, which like is super annoying, but it is totally doable. There's nothing like destroying your own art. It's it's not on your list of like to do
things you want to do.
Dream list of things to do. It's like let me destroy my own art.